Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, on this warm weekend afternoon here. I've got so many shows in the queue, I don't even know what to do at this point. Today we're going to talk about what I'm going to call the tunnel of knowledge. What is that in my brain? Well, this is the counter theory and the counter name that will fight this thing that is knowledge being represented in your brain as a destination, as a place that you simply go to, you sit down, you cross your legs, you say, and you know all the stuff that you need to know. The problem with that theory is that it leaves you ignorant as hell. We could use other words, but we'll just use the old H-bomb. Where do we get this notion that education and knowledge and wisdom is this destination? Well, think about how we're taught things as a child. You got to go to school. You got to go to grade school. Then you got to go to middle school. Then you got to go to high school. Once you get done with that, you're going to go to college. You're going to get your degree. Then you're going to get your master's. Then maybe you get a PhD. All those things are destinations. You have plaques on the wall that show you that that's a destination. Now, what's interesting is today, kids get these. Some schools give out like diplomas for the transition between middle school and high school, which varies different, to different regions, right? And then when you get your college degree, you look back on your intermediate degrees, let's just put that, your little diplomas. You're like, wow, that was cute. Look at me. I'm in ninth grade. Look at me. I'm a senior in high school and I got my diploma. But this is the big one right here. This is the big one. This is my college degree. And then again, you advance up depending on how you're doing, right? The problem with thinking that knowledge is a destination, that learning is the destination, that wisdom somehow caps out, is you sell yourself short of what you could truly be, and it will hinder, by design, your ability to learn anything new. Well, I've got a degree in this. How many times have you heard that for some fucking blowhard online? Well, I don't see your degree on the wall. Yeah, I can see yours, asshole, and it's like 40 years old. So unless you've been going to refresh courses, maybe you want to calm down with your rhetoric, right? The interesting thing about education in a public forum is that it becomes a competition. I've seen this happen. I didn't grow up in this world because I didn't go to college in a way that most people go to college, right? I went to just have fun and learn things, and I didn't worry about the degree. I was already doing what I wanted to do for a living, and I still do it. But I ingest nonfiction books like a lot of people ingest fictional books. And so I prefer to learn something that can attach to me, and then I will go out and live life to create the culture and the experience and the creativity that I need just by observing what is missing. Now, again, I am losing out on a lot of wonderful things, and I'm hoping that in my retirement years, I can pick up a book like my dad reads. My dad reads like libraries every year of books that are fictional. He loves it, and I'm hoping at some point that gene activates, but right now, it's not activating. For me, not going to college broke the paradigm and the mold that I have reached a point of finite education. It is a destination. I've got it. Look at me. I don't need to do anything else. I'm going to give you a weird analogy that I see a lot in my hometown. Don't see it so much in the coastal regions because the big city will kick your ass if you take this attitude. But when I go back to my hometown, I see people that are absolutely wonderful human beings that have sort of this identity as to who they are. I'm this guy. I do this thing. I'm this woman. I do this thing. She's the teacher. She's the English teacher. She will always be the English teacher. Well, what grade does she teach? 7th grade. Okay, so in my brain I'm thinking she deals with 7th graders all day long. She's been doing that for 20, 30 years. And so if I go have a conversation with her, I bet it's going to feel like having a conversational hybrid between an adult and a 7th grader. We have guys that join the military. And some got deployed. My age, the only thing you could have really been deployed unless you went to a 20-year track would be Desert Storm, and that was like a 48-hour war for most of the guys. But they went over there and unfortunately got a bunch of toxic anthrax shots that mysteriously blew up in the Oklahoma Federal Building, all the investigations of that. But they will go to the parade and they will wear their enlistment badges and the fact that they did some maneuvers in war and undeclared war, of course. And it will have been probably 1995 when they went to their first parade as this soldier. But now it's 23 years later, and they'll still go to that parade, and they'll still talk about it every single bar you ever talk to them, every restaurant. The war comes up, It was less than a week of their life. Nobody got hurt in our forces in that last couple days of deployment, which is where my friends were. Now, they suffer the slings and arrows of all the vaccinations and weird immunization stuff, like I said. A lot of the DU got into their bodies, so a lot of these guys, one of my friends died from it. But we hang on to these destinational accomplishments. And I've been in a world where I can't hang on to my accomplishments, but I've done amazing things. Or I participated with other people to do amazing things, right? Now, in my hometown, just to further this analogy in your brain, I had a relative that built a lot of homes in my hometown. And I don't know how many, dozens, a few dozen in his entire lifetime. But we can drive down the street and say, Uncle Ralph made that, all the houses on this street. And they're all different, right? They're not like track houses. Beautiful masterpieces, right? His home is still there. The family's gone now out of that house, but that house is like a wild masterpiece in our hometown, okay? So what he did lasted well beyond his years, right? And there's a lot of careers that do that. In the software business, in the video game business, it is only, what have you done for me lately? That's it. In the music business, it depends. If you're Led Zeppelin, it's the gift that keeps giving. If you're a one-hit wonder, it's about a tenth of Led Zeppelin experience. But overall, it's, this band and they created great music and you own their album, but nobody knows that they exist. You pull it out and play it at a party and people are like, yeah, it's pretty good. I put Led Zeppelin on, right? As an engineer for many, many years, 31 years professionally, I wonder how many of the lines of code I've written still exist out there on people's hard drives. I wonder how much of the artwork I've drawn for video games, for websites, for promo materials, all kinds of weird shit I've done. I wonder how many of my drawings still exist out there. It is my assumption that it's near nothing, simply because of the attrition of the world. Hardware doesn't last long enough to hang on to the bits, right? But I think it has to do with your opinion of curiosity. If you find curiosity comforting, then your likelihood of thinking about knowledge as a destination, it probably doesn't hold that true to you, because you're like, I'm always curious about something. I don't know everything. I'm going to die not knowing much, right? I'll know very little about the universe when I die. Even if I know more than every other human being on this planet, I'm still just a little puppy, right? But if curiosity scares you, if the unknown terrifies you, then you will hug the destination model. You won't be in a tunnel anymore on some cool amusement park ride. You will want to go to a back room and just sit there. Maybe in the most illustrious definition, some park, right? But in this realm, what I'm talking about, the people want to hug a destination. It's not like Yosemite where there's a big mountain over there and a bunch of stuff you haven't looked at and looked at. No, it is a industrial FEMA camp park, right? There's the barbed wire fences. You're not allowed to have a conversation over there because that'll make me feel uncomfortable about myself. Now, there's a ton of definitions about being old-fashioned and being modern, right? You used to say you're a little square cat, you know. If you thought inside of a box and you're just boring. I come from a little hometown, and I'm just keep talking about this because I have one relative of mine who I think for whatever reason, when she was young, the accolade came down from her parents. You are so smart, and we're so proud of you because you're smart. Smart. And so that became her beacon of pleasing her parents. And once they stopped saying that, it became her internal beacon of self-worth, to be smart. And before the internet, I think it was probably very easy to get in a little isolated, quarantined area of the Midwest. Don't move to the big city because you will find out how much you don't know. So you stay in the little Midwestern community, keep your circle of friends really small, and you'll feel like a goddamn genius every day of your life, right? But then the internet happened, and it not only happens to the people that are trying to live in this box, but it happens to their family members that live around them. And so I have like an annual circle with this person. Well, you know me. You've seen this show. I'm hardly going to sit around and go, I know everything. I am done. I am super smart. I've got the super smart plaque on my wall. Finished. You know, at best, I have a frame on the wall with no picture. The intro of this show, I filmed this table, this wrought iron table, right? And some of you might be going, why is he filming that? It just seems, okay, it's his backyard. All right, I see it. It's kind of interesting looking. This table has been in my family since the 80s. It was bought at some, place in Kansas where you buy, yard furniture. And it had a piece of glass on it initially. Long gone before it ever came to California. So at one point I had a piece of cardboard on it, like a nice thick, not cardboard, but thick board on it. That disappeared. It's out here in the back. The chairs don't have the cushions on them, although I have them in the garage. I just don't put them out here because it rains. But the most beautiful thing about this, in my mind, it is a piece of art. And it is the destination of what we are. Because when people walk into my backyard, here's what I say. They look at that table and they're like, what is that? I said, that is the conversation table. They look at me really funny and I say, well, if you pulled yourself up to this table that has no top, what could you possibly do but have a conversation? So for me, that table happened serendipitously to have no top, but now it is what we pull up and have deep thoughts at, to end with the preposition. I have friends that work out every single day at gyms. They compete in competitions. They win. And I look at their bodies and I think, wow, that's pretty amazing, man. You guys go to the gym all the time. You live in there. I can ask you any questions about the gym, and man, you just got it down. And I love that. I love that they're amazing in that physical way. What we do on this show is the mental version of what they're doing at a competition, a physical competition. We never stop thinking, do we? Now, I've always been a very curious guy, as you could probably imagine. So before the show came out, it was, I was always, I would do my work in life, and then something would boil up in me, right? I'd go, oh my God, this is a piece of research I just want to do. I just get that river of knowledge, right? That Philip K. Dick experience. And I'd get my notebooks out and I'd write 6 to 10 pages, 20 pages by hand of how to build a UFO and how I think I can do this with this, Faraday fabric that I designed and da-da-da-da, right? Okay. When I started the show, I had no idea what the hell I was doing, right? I mean, you can see that in season 1. But most of all, the thing I never paid attention to was the difficulty that I was going to run into coming up with new shows. Because I don't have a partner in this show, right? So you can, when you have a partner in a show, like when I had MK Ultra Radio, I could have a off day and Kyle would carry me through the show, and then he would spawn ideas that I could react from. And so having a partnership is huge. Why do you think Coast to Coast takes calls? Because it's a 3-hour show. That's why. I've routinely said on this show that if you want to learn how to communicate in your native language or the language of your choice better than you ever have in the past, you need to write poetry. Writing poetry does a bunch of different things. One, you have to have a feeling to write poetry in the first place. So if you have had a really rough life and you're very hard, then you can start from that mindset of, I don't give a fuck. Y'all could die. I don't care. I'm a hitman, whatever. You really hard poems. And then as you feel around inside your brain, you'll read your stuff back and maybe you'll go, well, it's not like I hate everybody. I like some people. Okay, well, what is that some people that you like? Write the next poem about that little mezzanine in your brain that's a little less callous and hard. And eventually, it's like pouring a bunch of filler inside of a mold. You think you're this shape. When you write poetry, you fill up the chamber with your true shape. It's like when they pour aluminum into termite farms, in the ground, and they pull this beautiful, crazy thing up out of the ground, right? Poor termites. This show has been the mold. It's been the filler for the mold of who the hell I am. And then when I finally realized I don't have a shape. I mean, I might have a shape at a particular second, but I, a human being, am a very dynamic creature, and you're a human being, I think, and you are the same way. And so it's an interesting new frontier that you get to explore. And this is why I don't like organized paradigms of thought. Religion. What's religion do? I'll give you the extreme experience that I've experienced in the comment section, although I will say 99.9% of everyone who's ever commented on one of my videos from this perspective has been absolutely kind and generous with the difference of opinion between the two of us. So to all of you who continue to listen and you do not believe what I believe in a religious sense, I think unequivocally you're the bigger man, you're the bigger woman. You've shown your patience on a level that's very godly. I believe in God. I just don't believe in any organized religion being true. True as in factually, historically true, not denying the truth of the wisdom that's inside religions. That's the beautiful part about it. But I have seen in my lifetime people damn people to hell. If you don't do this, man. A lot of times people, I cut myself off. Sometimes people come straight up to your face and tell you you're going to hell. I have a cousin, she used to do that. She lost all of her friends and all of her family connections, and then she backed off a little bit. But the backhanded way they do it is that they know that you do something, let's just say. Let's say you're sipping a little bit of wine, something Jesus turned water into. But you sip wine, and, these Neanderthal brains, right, they'll go, well, if you drink wine, you'll go to hell. So they're not telling you directly to your face you're going to hell, but they'll say something around you that is basically telling you you're going to hell. Damning someone. Wow. That's some judge and jury right there. They are the executioner at the end of the sentence. Oof. One of the most interesting passages in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's a passage in there that says, at least in one translation, never call another man a fool. And when I heard that, it really struck me because it was such a simple phrase. And I was like, wow, well, I don't use the word fool. I don't know too many people who do. I've used it more as an adult because I think it's the complexities and the subtleties of the word fool are very interesting. It's a very simple word, right? Fool. It means you're ignorant and you're stupid. Maybe it's more you're stupid than you're ignorant. But why would anyone have written that down ever in time? We know there's people that are ignorant. They haven't been educated about something. We usually write a blank check for ignorant children. They just don't know any better, right? How do you learn that fire's hot? Hey man, you can tell a kid fire's hot all you want. They got to touch something and they got to burn themselves. That's what my dad did, right? I asked my father at a Mexican restaurant when they used to serve those super hot metal plates inside of a black ceramic plate. And I said, is it hot? And he goes, touch it. Psh. And I mean, it burned, blistered the bottom of my finger. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. And of course I cried and he laughed his head off and everyone else was like, Chuck, you are the worst father ever. And honestly, nah, he was a perfect dad. In that sense, he was perfect. It's exactly what I needed to do. He knew it wasn't going to kill me. He knew I would heal. But how else am I going to learn? Later, I touched a soldering iron. Got a little reminder. Did that one all by myself. So how do you live your life if you've been living it as a destination constantly? Well, what do you do? A lot of you will just simply go, yeah, man, we watch your show or listen to your show because we're not like that. Good. Excellent. Now, you know that the second you turn this show off and you turn around into the world and you start having conversations with people, you're going to run into people, probably 3 out of 4 at least. You know, the Great Awakening of 2018 is definitely widening our gap of people that are willing to express a little bit of humiliation, right? But people want to essentially say they made it to a certain accolade. I graduated high school, you know? There's a lot of people who haven't graduated high school. You just don't know it. There's some people that can't read, and you just don't know it. There was an article out recently. A guy was a teacher. I think he's like a history teacher or something, but he didn't know how to read for the first 17 years. He was a teacher at a I think it was probably grade school. Isn't that amazing? How did he fill out a employment application? How did he read his students' tests to see if they passed or not? Was it all multiple choice, for Christ's sake? Probably with Common Core, right? If you took away all the paradigm of society, and let's just say we luck out and everyone's still nice to each other, there's not going to be law of the jungle, we would live very organic lives. You would get up and you'd probably do a survival routine, get your water, get your food, take care of your family. But let's just say that only takes a couple hours a day at the beginning, a couple hours a day at night, maybe a little bit in the 1 hour in the afternoon. That leaves a lot of time to do something else, right? But you've had those righteous people come up to you, haven't you? Especially in religion, they will damn you. They will tell you that they have it figured out, and you can look into their face and you'll see 2 things. You'll see a low IQ, and you will see the glee of their superiority over you for the paradigm that they're coming to you with, right? It's almost as if the most euphoric thing for some people when they read the Bible is, oh my gosh, I am now a traffic cop, and I get to walk around now and damn everybody straight to fucking hell. And that's the most exciting pastime that they have, because before that, they didn't have a purpose. This bullshit of global warming and climate change, it takes the average numbskull from being, in their mind, perhaps useless to overall society, which is obviously not true. It's something that they feared to be true. They latch onto this purpose and they run around posting online and blogging and carrying the cockpiece of the globalists who want every single one of us dead. Go check out the Georgia Guidestones, for fuck's sake, right? For those of you who don't know about the Georgia Guidestones, I bring it up every once in a while because it's hard to do a whole episode on it. But someone built this in the early 80s in Georgia, the state of Georgia in America. And it has these 10 commandments on several sides of these stones, all written in different languages. And then there's plaques on the ground to translate it into more languages. It's like almost 30 languages. But the first commandment is maintain world population under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. For those of you who are extremely bad at math, if you divide a number, a limited number, by the total quantity of the number, so you do 500 million divided by 7.5 billion, you have a 98% reduction in world population. And as I always remind you on this show, when I mention this subject, no one builds a restaurant at capacity of 500 and wants 500 people to show up every single day. It's too much. If they thought if 500 people were going to show up every single day, they'd build a restaurant that could hold 1,000. So there'd be some room left, right? So they could have a swell during a holiday, Mother's Day breakfast or whatever, and then it goes back down to some space. They will not start off the population at the maximum apex. They will start it off at probably 150 million people. That's what I'm guesstimating. Less than half. That gives them centuries and perhaps millennia to repopulate back up to 1 billion. But they'll control all the access to energy and birth control and everything, and they probably will never hit 500 million. And 150 million is 99.9% of the population missing. So when these people attach themselves to these definitions of intelligence and they run around damning the universe, you couldn't walk any closer, in my opinion, to pure foolishness and pure evil than to be that ignorant, right? Foolishness leads to this other behavior. Now you'll talk to some people. I've definitely had this conversation. Isn't it funny how when a syllable just disappears from a word because I'm moving my mouth? You'll talk to some people and they will be very existential and they'll say things like, I'm on a journey, and when I die, this particular journey of being a humanoid is over, and I transcend to the next level of consciousness, the other form of consciousness, and we'll see what that journey has to do. Prince, he always talked about in the song "Let's Go Crazy." He talks about how it's going to be in the afterlife, and he says, his general consensus was, you're going to get a little help in the afterlife, but in this one, you're on your own. We can hope he's right. I think a child can sense when their parent believes in these destinational paradigms of knowledge. Because what happens? What's the difference between a child and an average parent? I assume most of you, and I'm not bullshitting you, I assume most of you, if you're parents, you're above average parent. If you're watching this show, you just are. If you haven't had your kids yet, you're going to be an above average parent. But let me make you hip to one thing, in case you're in the middle of this or you're thinking about getting into it. Your child, from the moment they are born, and I mean the second their eyes open out of that uterus, they are on a journey. For the first couple years, they are sucking in everything and trying to find out what will get them in trouble, what will fill their belly, where to sleep, where not to sleep, how to get love out of every person who comes in contact with them. Now, when they throw tantrums, you'll wonder. But the parent is what? Depending on the age of the parent, they're looking for destinations of completeness. I know how to make money. I have a skill. I get a job, and I stay there, and I keep the skill really sharp, and I make the money, and I bring it home to my kid, and they get to have what they need. The older you are, the more you're stuck in your ways, right? That's what they say. So you're more in a destinational loop, usually as an older person. But your kid isn't. Your kid is on a major journey. If you're a parent that can only listen to your own music from your own age, right? You only listen to 80s music. This is what happens. with kids that are my age, Gen X. They're either stuck in the 80s or they're stuck in the 90s. A great song can come out today, and they simply won't listen to it to give it a chance. Now, obviously, music has changed. Most of us would say, okay, if the kid can play his own instrument and sing without a auto-tune, I'll give it a chance. And I'll give you that exception because I'm the same way. But there are great songs that are made every single day that are real bands that really play. They aren't getting all the TMZ traffic because that shit is swill, usually. But your kid needs for you to be on an inquisitive journey with them. They're rediscovering a lot of stuff that you discovered as a kid. A lot of times parents will minimize it. Oh, yeah, you're going to find out this, you're going to find out that. I've already been there. And you're throwing your accolade in their face. I've already been there. You don't know anything. Boom, boom, boom. I was raised by one of these parents. And it wasn't intentional. And in most cases, it wasn't intentional. It was just trying to remind me that there is much more to learn, which is an interesting lesson. It can have weird side effects. Now, I've rarely shared this kind of stuff on the show. I think I have only one other show, but I'm going to throw it back in there because I think it's valuable as a parent for you to understand the side effects of some of the things that you can say. Now, most of us over 25, especially those of us in our 40s, will simply go, man, you really don't know anything. You really don't really start learning anything material in life on a social level until you're about 25 years old. That's when you sort of slow down a little bit, and I don't even know if that's true anymore. Definitely was the case for me. And so you'll hear people say, you don't know anything at 18. You don't know anything at 22. Now, some kids grow up a lot faster than others, but I think that's overall very, very true. But we say it in a way that's belittling instead of saying it in a way that's exciting. And so, my experience with girls as a young man was very interesting. And it took me a while to really recall this in my brain to realize who was the aggressor. It was interesting. My first, I guess you could say, sexual thing that ever happened to me was a girl. They're always usually girls my age. Was 5 years old. 5 years old, I was doing things with a neighbor girl. We just mutually, I guess, just accepted we just played around, right? We didn't do anything massive. 2 years later, it went to a much higher level, but another girl who was even younger than me at the time, probably at least a year younger than me, and she was just like, let's do this, let's do that. I'm 7 years old. I think she was 6. I turned 8 fairly quickly, so she must have turned 7, but that's super duper young, man. So I had all these experiences. I got some peer pressure, light stuff. Like I said, the neighbor kid said, you need to French kiss your girlfriend, don't just regular kiss her, and everyone's watching and we do it, But when I got in my teens, I moved in with my dad, and we'd have the dad conversation. My dad was really cool. He still is, but back in those days, he was the coolest freaking dad you could ever have. I mean, seriously. Hence my cool vibe today. And he had friends that were even cooler than him. It was awesome. And so we had just a really good network of guys, like men around me, like burly dudes that, just pull their station wagon up into our garage and just start tearing the engine apart and repairing it. I'm sitting there just looking at all this crazy stuff and asking a million questions. They're always kind enough to explain to me what's what. But there came a point when I got into the second stage of girls, where I was the aggressor. I was the one that wanted to have the relationship and go steady, as they say. And there was a point where my dad, I think he didn't mean it the way that it came out, but he said, you still don't know what it's really about in so many ways. But he said it a little more flippant and a little more sort of demeaning. And I don't want to use that word too strongly because it wasn't really like, you don't know nothing, kid. It wasn't like that. But it was some flavor of that, right? Well, then what was my paradigm of exploration of girls became this thing of, he's saying that with a sort of overtone. I may have misunderstood him, but I took it as I need to do this because in order to get his respect, I need to bring back the boon of full knowledge of a girl's body. I need to have sex with them. And so, in my mid-teens. I fell in love. She fell in love. Her first time, my first time. Boom. We did it. It was beautiful. I was very, very fortunate to have a beautiful first experience. It has never not been beautiful. It ended beautiful. I mean, the whole thing's been good. Okay. So then my dad and I are fixing VCRs because it was one of our pastimes to make money, just to have fun. And I'm just working on this VCR, and he's got one over there, and he's doing his thing. And the subject comes up about girls. And he says it again. Well, you don't know nothing. Something like that. I can't remember what it was. You don't know the whole game or whatever the hell he said. And I turned to him and I said something to the effect of, well, what if I told you I am a couple weeks into knowing that other side? Meaning I've been having sex for a couple weeks. And my dad was like, what? And he just, he did his version of turning white, and it was like, okay, you're not going to get a girl knocked up at 15 years old. Let's go to the drugstore. My dad takes me to the drugstore. He's like, you're going to buy this, this, and this. He goes, that sucks, that sucks. You got a lot of, he says, you have a lot of classmates because of this. He was showing me various things. I won't go into details. But he sent me home with what I needed to keep everything cool, And so my dad was good because he was young, and even though he was older than me, obviously he was 23 years older than me. He is still to this day. He had a very young spirit, super young spirit. To this day, he's very young in spirit, which is great. I didn't know how valuable that was until I grew up. And I ran into adults that were very stoic and very destination knowledge oriented. Life wasn't a journey for them. Life was a destination. What happens if you adopt the destination, but you don't have a bad life? Because this happens every single day. Little hometowns are full of these people. They don't have the big city to continually entertain them. They don't have the big city to offer them, dozens and dozens of different job types. And so there's only, a couple jobs in town. You either work for the city, you work for Walmart, you pump gas. I mean, there's like a few things, a couple factories in the towns next door. They can't set their expectations too high in that particular realm, because then they'll disappoint themselves. Man, there's nothing to do. I got to move away from my hometown, which means I lose all my friends, lose all my family. I lose the land that I love. That's one thing we always forget when we move away. There's a great benefit to a really strong foundation for a human being. What's interesting in my experience, having come from largely the Midwest of Kansas/America, is that when I got to California, I realized subliminally that I had this great work ethic. I had a really strong knowledge base of everything that I loved, because I was left alone in the Midwest to focus, right? Not a lot of distractions. I didn't have a beach. I didn't have Disneyland. I didn't have Hollywood, Universal Studios, any of that stuff. I focused. I made do. When I got to California, I met a lot of people that had lived the other life, constantly entertained by their surroundings. There's nothing wrong with that, but what it left them with is, when they needed to become a worker bee, they really struggled with their work ethic, because focusing was not something that they natively did in this super entertaining world. The other compliment I get in California from time to time, which always surprises me, it pleases me, but it surprises me, is someone will be talking to me. Sometimes I hear this third person or third party through a proxy, right? For instance, I had a girl that I became friends with, and eventually I met her husband at a restaurant, and I was just talking to him, And then later she chatted me through Facebook or something, and she goes, my husband said, he's just a really great guy, and he's really honest. He's really just one of those guys. And where I come from, no one would ever say that. They would just expect you to be that way. But in the big city, it's a distinction. Wow, it seems like he's the kind of guy who would always tell the truth. Wow. You're like, yeah, I guess there is another way to be. Shiesty, manipulative, right? And I have to say, of all the people I've befriended in California, I seem to have a means of finding people that are very honest and wonderful human beings. So there's not a huge lack of supply of these individuals, but it doesn't take much effort to find the shiesty guy, the shiesty girl. Most of them are guys that I know. When you become an engineer, something very interesting happens, depending on what kind of engineer you become. If you become a software engineer, then there is no destination in your life, unless you work for the government, where you can sit there with a 10-year job, not 10 years, but tenure, and you can become a fossil, and they'll keep paying you until you die and get your retirement, right? But if you work in a competitive corporate world, and let's say that you were I don't know, like in my experience, geez, we used to program in Pascal. No one does that anymore. Used to program in C. Now it's C++. And you still have C++, but you then have to have the platform language, either Microsoft Windows languages or Macintosh mobile languages, regular language. We have Swift now. It's a brand new language that comes out. Everything renews constantly, so you're never able to settle down in your brain with this destination knowledge technique. When you make video games, well, when I started doing video games, it was text-based video games like Zork. Then we went up to art-based video games. We drew them in tiles for a long time. Then things went 3D, and now it's 3D models. Well, then 3D models went through all kinds of evolution, right? Yeah, it looks fake. What else are we going to do? It's a PlayStation 1. We're doing our best. And now with PlayStation 4, it's like, is this real or is this a game? You know? When the PlayStation 2 came out, I've said this story a couple times. I put Madden Football. I worked for EA. Yeah, I got free copies of everything. I put Madden Football on my TV downstairs, 60-inch screen, rear projection, and I made the AI play itself. And I had the mother of my child come in, who's a big sports fan, and she looked at this thing, and she's watching the game. And she finally came up after about 5 minutes upstairs where I was getting my kid's stuff ready, and she goes, is this on TV right now? I looked at her and I said, that's a video game. And I just watched her face go, oh, I thought that was strange. It didn't really occur to her that she was just convinced that a video game was real. That was 18 years ago, people, right? So there's certain careers that will perpetuate the destination model, and there's certain careers that will perpetuate the tunnel model. The tunnel is, who stays in tunnels? Nobody. You always go in and you always come out. You're always moving in a tunnel if you have your way, right? But how does a destination model sink its claws into you? Well, in religion, you can be a casual Sunday morning Christian and you don't walk around exuding Christianity. You won't quote passages out of the Bible and tell people they're going to hell, usually. But then you have your sort of next level religious person where they get into Bible studies. They go to church 3 times a week instead of 1 time a week. And they're a little bit more friendly, and usually they live more by the example because they're ingesting it so much. Again, whatever you take into your brain is what you become, right? As long as you're not into the hell and damnation part of the Bible and trying to cast judgment on others, you're simply going to become more Christ-like, which I can't think of a better thing for you to do. But you go to that third tier where you become fanatical. And this is where you think you should go down to the local main street with a bullhorn and some painted signs and tell everyone the world's going to end because you finally read Revelations, and you look around the world and you realize that metaphor is everywhere. And you'll start telling all your local friends, well, I think the second coming's coming. Look at it. Look at what the Bible says. Look what the globalists are doing. Not realizing that every generation before you has said exactly the same thing, that these hell and damnation revelation passages have always been so metaphorical and so symbolic that you can always find that in society. Since the utter pounding into the consciousness of man through the Inquisitions of Europe, which is essentially a way of saying forcing people to believe something they didn't believe with no evidence, we have had people thinking that the world was going to end every day the world has existed. And there's two sides to that world is going to end coin. You have your more on-point person who is saying the world's going to end, and they believe that. Once they believe that's going to happen, they believe it's going to happen really soon, what do you do with your life? Do you continue exploring life? Fuck no. You sit around bracing for impact. And then you have a non-religious version of the same exact thing, which is you have someone who has grown very cynical about life. They had a lot of dreams, which is a beautiful thing, but for whatever reason, you have a lot of dreams, but there's only so many days in the year, so many hours in the day that you can study anything, focus. There's opportunities you need to run into. You have children, life gets busy. And some people can look at their life and go, geez, I really wish I'd done that. And so they feel like they have been pushed into a destination that they didn't really want. And so they begin to sort of grind out every single day, right? They hear about dying and I think every adult has had this experience. I don't think that anyone's immune from this. Some people fear death on a level that's like nuts, in my opinion. But if you have some model for the afterlife, I think, whether it be religious or some sort of, I have totally no problem with ceasing to exist or whatever the case might be, death will be presented to you. You'll get on a plane and you'll be like, oh God, this thing could fall out of the sky. And most people will probably say, I don't want that to happen. But I think at some point in your life, there'll be that trip where you kind of go, well, if it's my time to punch out, I'm going to punch out. And these taxes that I have, this job that I may or may not like, all the burdens of life, my aching back or whatever, well, at least all that'll go away. And so they create this sort of image of their life. I mean, if you create a gestalt in your brain, right, a full image of your life, and you believe that there are locks on every door, in fact, there may not even be any doors. They've been welded shut. They have been removed from the wall. And you're at a destination, you might give up on the journey. You're in the tunnel and you just sit down, cross your legs and go, well, this is where we are. I think it's important that you think this sort of thing through so that you have a little more weaponry or energy to keep going, to knock down the obstacles that are in the way, that are giving you this idea that you're in some state that can't be changed. A guy from my hometown, I don't know if he's still going. I deactivated the Facebook page in which I saw his feed, but he was married for 25 years, had 2 beautiful children, and after 25 years, his wife finally decided to fall in love with someone else and divorce him. And where most of us might keep this fairly private, this guy exhibitioned his life, his consciousness, into gigantic posts on Facebook. He was smart enough not to call his wife a bunch of names, but he was definitely talking about things using very, poignant language, let's just put it that way. And what ended up happening was the rest of the town, because we're a small little town and we care about everyone, started talking in the back channels. Oh my God, have you seen so-and-so's posts? Oh my God, he's really just out there. Can you believe he's posting this kind of stuff? Now, obviously, if you're a psychologist or you're sensitive to these kind of things, you'll know that he was essentially going through a public exhibition of his own therapy. I still would not recommend it, but it worked for him and he thought his life was about over, right? But I could see he was in a perspective. He was giving up on the journey for a short bit. I know that as long as he stays alive, life will change. Life will get better. As long as he stays in the public eye, he'll meet another woman who thinks he's the greatest thing on planet Earth. He'll remarry, or at least get a partner. Probably won't die alone. And all this hurt that is love that he lost, which he probably lost long before he realized he lost it, obviously, it'll go away. But as much as I ignored his feed, I kept getting back channel communications from people about this. And so I started looking at his feed and reading his posts. It's not that I don't care about the guy. I don't really know him personally. I knew his brother really, really well, and his brother passed. who was my age. But I eventually figured out what to say. At least one thing I thought might be a little helpful in terms of perspective for him. And so I asked him a question. I said, "How long were you married?" He said, 25 years. And I said, "Okay. So in 25 years, you were married to a woman that you love dearly. You had 2 beautiful children who you've celebrated in your posts among all these other acidic posts that you put up there." So I did a little bit of math on my own end, and I said, look, in your 25-year journey, I said, I have tried to marry 8 different women, and it didn't work out. I tried. I don't get in relationships with people just to have fun. I get in relationships to go the full distance. But something will happen. Not the right timing, it's just something will happen. So I said, you have succeeded where I have failed for 25 years. I'd say you're pretty fortunate. And guess what? You're not done yet, right? You're not dead. You're alive. You're very alive. These posts are testament to his complete consciousness. And it seemed like a bit of his acidic nature, the volume of his posts, seemed to calm down just a teeny bit after maybe he had a second to think about that. He still went on and posted things. But he was thinking about his life having reached the destination. And of course, when you get married, you want to think about it in a destinational journey. But the problem that he admitted in his posts was that he treated his marriage like a destination. What do we call that? You take your life for granted. You take your wife for granted. And when you do that, you may pay the consequence that he paid. How many people have you known that have lost their jobs and they'll call you up and say, "Oh my God, I just got laid off, I just got fired," whatever. And you can hear it in their voice. They, for at least a short time, will feel hopeless about their situation. And you're trying to convince them, "Hey man, it's okay. It's all right. You'll find another job." Of course, it's obviously easy for you to say that because you probably have a job at the time. Even if you don't have a job, you're like, "Welcome to the club. Now let's both combine efforts on a daily basis. Let's check in with each other and fuel each other's positivity to get a new job." Let me ask you this. Does your body consider itself a destination? When you were born, did you stay a baby? When you had your 16th birthday, did you stay 16 years old? You know where I'm going with that, right? Your body is an organic, living being. The doctors tell us, the scientists tell us that every 7 years, every cell in our body has completely renewed. So if you look at that picture of yourself 10 years ago, every cell in that photograph is dead, long gone. In fact, your epidermis probably renews even faster, but your eyeballs have renewed, your hair is renewed, everything. You live in a world that isn't a destination all around you. The climate does change. It's a normal thing. The earth does grow. Coastlines fall into the ocean every once in a while. New coastlines are born. Go look at Hawaii. The volcano is building a new island, slowly but surely. Would you play a video game if you could easily finish it, and then every time you load up the game, it's the same level every single time? In fact, if you play Tetris, for instance, the same block pieces fall every single time in the same exact order. You've learned exactly how to place it to the point where you can play nearly infinitely. I can tell you for a fact you wouldn't play that game very far. Kids, I've talked about this before. When you play a video game and you go into God mode, you find a little secret code where you have all the ammunition and you're immune and you just kill everything in the game. You're done playing that game in about 15 to 20 minutes, and you no longer look at the real game with any interest. So if you try to go back in without God mode, you're like, this is hard. I tasted what it was like to have no obstacles. I don't think I like this thing with obstacles. How many times have you known parents that over-coddled their children, and when their children entered the real world, it was hard? They dropped out of college because that requires focus. They had to get themselves up in the morning and go to class because it's not a law that you have to go to college. And so they dropped out. For people like myself, Steve Jobs, probably even Bill Gates, and a ton of other people, we went to college. It was fun. It was cool. I really celebrate the classes that I took. They changed my life, but it wasn't fast enough. I was hindered by the people in the class that didn't know something. So I had to take a prerequisite to get to the class that had the first piece of information that I didn't know. In the end, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to buy a book. I'm going to go straight for what I don't know instead of sitting in this class for 6 months paying money for this experience when I can just go learn what I need to learn. And with YouTube out there today, my God, there's a YouTube video for every single thing you could ever want to be an expert at. And they will show you shortcuts. They will show you the way to be a beginner, an intermediate, and an expert. What has been the commodity of the world for probably the last, 20 years? I believe that one of the strongest commodity types is anything that serves the short attention span. Michael Bay is an expert director at short attention span directing. He's made a tremendous amount of money, and he is the master of that direction style. I don't know anyone that can direct better than him, the short attention span. But from all the Gen Zs and the millennials that I have bumped into, I guess they're Gen Ys, I'm seeing that pattern end slowly. I'm seeing kids turn on old movies, like from the 30s and the 40s. They're starting to see what depth feels like, and it feels good to their soul. A lot of them will mourn the fact that that kind of stuff isn't created today. Again, I get every once in a while, mostly it's my closest friends, and I've mentioned this a couple times recently, but I get a lot of flack for making episodes that are an hour or more. Man, if you made 15-minute episodes, you'd have like 1 million subscribers. I'm like, well, those aren't the subscribers that I'm compatible with. So why would I want a whole trough of people coming to me every day to give them something that I don't want to give them? I don't even give them myself if I have a choice. It is my firm belief from my own personal experience with my own family members that tend to engage in this destinational thinking that they aren't that intelligent. They aren't that intelligent. As I always tell you on this show, the only way you can create more neural connections in your brain is to think. Solve a problem in your mind. Review your mind. Take inventory. Do that thing I said way back in season 1. Take everything that you think is true or false, push it out the door like you're fixing up your hoarding house. Bring everything back into the room of your brain and judge it again with your current knowledge base. Say, is this true? Is this false? Or is this, I don't know. You got a left side of your pantry and right side of your pantry with this center table of your undecided things that you have accumulated over your life. If you're going to be on a journey, you're going to want your brain to get more intense every day you're alive. It will give you more tools. It will give you more processor power for every instruction that comes through the processor. I hope that you're on a journey. I hope that you're in a tunnel, and the tunnel is beautiful. The tunnel will be weird at times. It'll be a bit like that tunnel ride in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory back in 1973. It'll be scary sometimes. As long as you keep walking, you keep living, I guarantee everything that's bad in your life will change. As the guy told me when I was trying to apply for a car with a credit score of 540, he said when he was notifying me that I was not going to be able to get the loan to buy the car, he said to me, life's full of peaks and valleys. And he goes, you're in a valley right now. And he goes, you know what's nice about that? He goes, there's only one place you can go when you're on rock bottom, and that's up. You might not go straight up, but what happens to a plane when it goes straight up? It stalls, right? Best way to get high altitude is to just gradually move up every day. I know you feel me. Hopefully this was helpful, a little exercise for your brain. Let's all get denser brains. Let's all think And I need your comments to stimulate more thinking in me. So before you minimize it, it really helps. I think I will tell you this. Some of the best comments I get on any one of these videos starts off like this. I've never posted a comment on a video. I've never had an account on YouTube. I'm not trying to suck you into the global AI of all that shit, but unfortunately, because there's so many spammers in the world, I can't open up a forum on my website because it would get full of all kinds of Rolex ads. But the quality of the first-time commenters are some of the best comments I've ever read. Sadly, I don't see them post a second time a lot of times, but those first ones are a gem. So please get out there and comment if you can. Obviously, the game is to like and subscribe. If you have this feeling that it's like, man, this channel should have a lot more subscribers, well, there's two ways that organically make that happen, and that is to comment and to like and subscribe. So I guess there's three ways. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. There's audio, video, a locked Facebook group, and Patreon. So until next time, take care of someone else and yourself, and I'll see you in the next episode. Over and out.